Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. It's been probably over a year since I've made a real substantive vlog, which is why I started uploading videos in the first place. So I figured I should probably do a new one. So OCD is something I haven't talked about because it hasn't, up until this year, hasn't really been a problem. I've always had obsessive compulsive tendencies. Always been routine, pattern oriented, and I guess anal retentive, double, triple checking things, but I didn't think that was really abnormal, and after I was diagnosed with AS, I just put it down to that. But this year, I made a lot of, not a lot, but a couple of significant changes this year, and that seemed to act as a catalyst, and things very abruptly, very quickly got out of control. It was OCD, how I would describe it, is it's this anxiety. It's a you know that it's a completely baseless fear. It's as if the sort of the logic of I guess your subconscious is that if you connect the anxiety to something, for example, I need to check the stove, make sure the stove's turned off, I need to make sure that the door is locked. You feel like if you check that and verify it, then the anxiety will subside, but it doesn't, because going and starting a ritual of checking something, it only legitimizes the fear. And so now you check the lock, go back to bed, the anxiety's still there, it hasn't subsided at all, so I have to go check the lock again. And so it becomes about these meaningless rituals that only exacerbate the anxiety. So it got to a point where I wasn't leaving my home. I had most of the things in the home unplugged, and I was really afraid most days to get out of bed. And it was really, it's such a weird cognitive thing, in that, you know, it got to the point where, again, I knew that it was all irrational. And as far as the rituals, as far as things needing to be checked, I knew that wasn't the case. But I also knew that if I interacted with my environment at all, my mind was going to start coming up with these rituals, coming up with things that need to be checked. So I was afraid of the fear. I knew that if I did anything, that my brain was going to start working on it, and you know, maybe this is something that needs to be redone or rechecked. Or to feel like you don't have control over your mind or your emotions. And I know there are people who deal with illnesses where that's so much worse. For me, this is just like just a glimpse into that, and that was enough for me. Doing a lot better now. So now it's just it's a matter of learning to let those irrational thoughts just pass, seeing them for what they are and just letting them pass like everyone else does. Anytime I try to leave the home, I would go back and several times and check the front door to make sure it was locked. And I mean, there were days when I did it several dozen times. There were days where I just decided I couldn't leave. There was no way I was going to be able to. Saying, look, you know you locked the door. You've already checked it 30 times. but it just doesn't feel right yet. And and so you start to think, well, maybe if I do it again. You just can't entertain the thoughts at all. It's a matter of going from being hyper focused and obsessive to just having to and just walk away with everything in your being trying to pull you back. But when I look back on how I was just 4 or 5 months ago, it seems so bizarre and ridiculous to think about how paralyzed I was. And yet that's that's something I suppose that could happen again if I don't keep anyway. So I was not online. I was not on my computer for several months. I have not written since March. But what I did do was, so I had to come up with something new to do. Like, I couldn't just lay in bed and turning over thoughts in my head. So I was doing painting at first, and then I started to worry about paint like getting everywhere and getting into things. So I quit painting. I started drawing with pens, and I started worrying about the pens just like spontaneously just leaking and the ink going everywhere. So I switched to pencils, and when the pencils went dull, that was the end of that, because I didn't want pencil shavings getting all over the place. So then I was able to kind of get back into using pens, and I started just writing down ideas and doodling in all these spiral notebooks that I hadn't used for years, because with my eyes I can't write longhand anymore. So this was the only means for me to do anything creative, which is one of the very few things that centers me and calms my brain down. That's how it's always been. So I just started writing really big in the notebooks, and after I'd filled 4 of these things, I started to look back at all of this. I mean, it's just some of the weirdest stuff I've ever come up with. And I thought, okay, this is going to be the new novel. So that's what I'm working on now. Things Inside, which the manuscript I talked about a number of times, it's on the back burner for now. I'm outlining, I'm world building, and I'm really excited for this one. I think that this is gonna, lift me out of this funk. Anyway, neck hurt. I lost 50 pounds in about 3 months because I quit eating, because I was afraid to eat. Don't ask. And I'm gaining it back. Don't worry. Whee!